Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. One thing I want to make sure, this is from the public band descriptors for the lexical resource of the writing section. We have different bands here, right? 9, 8, 7, 6. And then what most students see, because when I read my students' essays, what I notice is like they tend to force these fancy words and expressions in their essays. Some of these words that I don't even know, right? I'm reading these essays and I'm like, okay, so what does this word mean? I'm not really sure. It's like, and some students go, are you an IELTS instructor? Like, well, how come you don't know this word? I'm like, I don't know. So because students tend to focus too much on this aspect, like uses uncommon lexical items. This feels like they might think this is the way to get a higher score in writing by using some uncommon lexical items. And then you see this with band 7, 8, and even 6, right? So 7 says uses less common vocabulary, and 6 also says attempts to use less common vocabulary. If you guys are making the same mistake, I'm here to tell you that it's okay to use words that are common, right? As long as you're using them naturally. And I take it from me, I'm never like good at using advanced words actually. But what students don't really see is these highlighted parts are more important. Okay, so what we have is, for example, band 9 candidate uses a wide range of vocabulary with very natural, sophisticated control. So that means like he has a wider range of vocabulary, but with sophisticated control. Band 8, again, wide range of vocabulary, fluently and flexibly to convey precise meanings. And 8 says skillfully uses uncommon lexical items. Skillfully is the key word here. This was the word that I saw in one of the, someone like years ago came to take the mock test with us, and then they used the word docile. The British, I think, pronounce it docile, but American way of saying it docile. So I saw the word, I didn't really know what it was, so I asked him like what it meant, what he meant by docile, and he said, what, don't you know, it just means easy. So instead of saying easy, I just used docile. And I actually looked it up because I'm not ashamed. Like in my class when I'm teaching, I'm not really ashamed to look up words in front of students because it's okay. So and then it meant quiet and easy to influence, persuade, or control. So like maybe for animals, right? Docile animals. It's a very docile. It's okay. He's not aggressive. He's docile, right? Or maybe when you're talking about the once docile population has finally risen up against the ruthless regime. That's not the best example, but that's from the dictionary. So he meant to use this word to mean easy, like it was an easy task. It was a docile task. And you can see how he made that mistake, right? He thought in his head was using this uncommon vocabulary, but he wasn't really using it skillfully, so to speak. So we're going to do a little activity here to check your level of vocabulary. I'm not really sure if you can see the list. So one misconception about vocabulary is that you tend to, like students tend to think longer words are more advanced. The longer the word is, the more difficult or the more advanced the word they think it is. So these are the list of words. I want you to think about the level, the CFR level of these words. So because if you go to Cambridge Dictionary, they usually give you the level, right? Like B2, B1, C1, C2, etc. So I'm going to read out the words because I know that some of you are staying here. I'm not really sure if you can see the screen. So I'm just going to read out the words and pick 3 words you think are labeled C1 or C2. Okay? Additionally is our first word. So let me know if you think this is a C1 or C2. What do you think the level of this word is? Additionally. maybe B1 or B2, okay? Destruction. B1, B2, okay, maybe. Household. Maybe household, okay. Effective. Could be, I don't know. Produce. If it's verb, right? If it's noun, how do you say it? Produce. It's a fresh kind of fruit. Able. Yeah, I would even say A2, right? Someone's just saying C2. Come on, this guy again, come on. H. Okay, flat. Okay, absolute. Maybe, yeah. Okay, so again, we have three words that are labeled C2 here. So which three do you think are C2 level words? Household, yeah, maybe. Destruction. I'm sure you've been to this presentation, so. Yeah. Okay, so as you can see, we have all these words, right, in green, B2, B1, but only the three words, the shortest words in the list, able, age, flat. Of course, not the meanings first that come to your mind. Able, for example, C2, when it means clever, he's a very able student, right? He's a very able, maybe teacher. I'm not sure what he's doing here. Age, C2, in the phrase like, I'm 23. No, it's about like, it's age old, like it's very old. And flat, I'm having a flat tire, so I have a flat tire. I've had a flat tire, meaning like you had a problem with your tire in your car. So what it means is that when IELTS wants you to use uncommon words, they don't really mean words like docile. They mean words like these. Words that are familiar to everyone, but they're using it in the right context. They're using it with the right, again, skillfully, with the natural sophistication, natural control. So another misconception that I need to kind of point out here is like when uncommon means uncommon to ESL students, uncommon to us, not the native speakers. But a lot of the words that, let's say, Uzbek candidates are using, oops, I keep thinking this is my glasses. A lot of the words that Uzbek candidates are using nowadays in their essays are uncommon even for native speakers. And that's not a good thing. It's not something that we need to be proud of. Okay, it just means we really don't know how to use our words effectively. So it's better to use words that are very common for native speakers, but that are not common for ESL students. Because when you're an ESL student, you don't really think about these C2 meanings of these words. This is what you need to be concentrating on, okay? The final slide is like, okay, so how to learn new words, because a lot of students, this seems to be a common question, right? For students like, okay, how do I learn new words? Well, by exposing yourself to real English, natural English, by listening to podcasts, by reading a lot of journals and magazines, and et cetera, et cetera. Asia speaking exam. Again, this is from a recent presentation that I've prepared after I've scored band 9. But I'm sure you know the story, but if you're not familiar, to get to this band 9, I've actually attempted the test quite a few times. I wasn't really chasing after 9. At one point in my life, I was basically taking the test to see how the nature of the questions would change from, season to season, from year to year, etc. So I was really taking the test like just to be able to teach my students the right way. But I admit, starting with the year 2022, 2023, I started taking the test more often because I could kind of sense this band 9 was close. I could smell it, right? I could see it happening. So I took the test 6 times exactly in the year 2023, and you can see that these are the test results, and the last one was 9, but you can actually see that having an 8.5 in writing here was like, it was enough to get a band 9, but it was just unlucky attempt with the listening. So the only 7.5s, like if I really didn't get my 9, I would probably go mad at British Council or IDP, because the only times I scored 7.5 for writing was when I had 3 9s, which would like keep me at 8.5. So that was like, I thought it was something intentional. But finally it was meant to happen, so it happened. So I'm really glad about it, but that's what it is. So what I'm trying to say is, like, I want you to pay attention to the speaking scores, okay? So you can see that mainly it was 8.5, 8.5, 3 9s, 8. So why the variation? Why the fluctuation, right? Why am I not getting the same score every time I take the test? Does it mean there's something wrong with the IELTS exam, or does it mean there's something wrong with me? Neither. The answer is neither, right? It's just a test, and it's just your score depends on many different factors. It just, like, candidates usually have a range. I always say, I use the word range, like the minimum, something in the middle, and the maximum range. Like, usually, as you can see, with my range was from 8 to, for speaking, from 8 to 9. So 8 was my minimum. This is like, I would get an 8 in an exam if everything goes against me that day. Like, in English we say having a bad hair day. Like, you wake up, your hair is like messed up, right? So you're having a bad hair day. You go take the exam, you go into your speaking room, there's something wrong. Like, they make you wait, or the examiner is not in the right mood, right? So a lot of factors that just go against you that day. So you probably get your minimum within that range. Normally, if everything is okay, you tend to get your like middle score, something in the middle, right? 8.5 is something that I normally get, I think, 5 or 6 times out of 10. But 9 for me was it was my maximum. Like, everything like just goes according to plan. Everything is like, you have a great examiner, you have a great report with the examiner, you have a great how do I put this, atmosphere, right? You tend to kind of, you tend to be in sync with the examiner. You think alike, you really are friendly, right? You understand each other great, like in a very great way. So yeah, if that happens, then you get 9. So then I get questions, like some students approach me and say, look, I have a friend, but he's not as good as me. He also got 7, and I also got 7, but I'm like definitely better than him, right? So both of these candidates are getting 7, but there's clearly a difference between these candidates. So to account for this difference, or to explain this difference, you can just, again, refer to the concept of range, because the first candidate, who's not as good as this guy, probably getting his maximum score, right? He's just having a lucky day. He's just acing the test. He's just having the maximum score, 7. This candidate B, on the other hand, he may actually be really good. He may be like 7.5 guy or 8 guy, but he's not really lucky on that day. He's not really getting his maximum score. Again, because of many different factors. Sometimes they're not within your control. You cannot really control these factors. Okay? So if you've been wondering, so that's one of the things you can see this happening, like getting a 9 to get an overall 9 in the exam just means everything has to go your way. Every single thing in every single section, listening, reading, writing, speaking, everything has to go your way to get a perfect 9. And I have to admit, it's very difficult, it's challenging, but you have to be a little crazy to keep trying, right? You just keep trying when you fail. And it's the same thing as with any score. You might be aiming for 7, you might be aiming for 8, you might be aiming for something else, 6. It's the same story over and over. Okay? So you just keep trying, keep that like positive mindset, and it's gonna happen. But this is a speaking portion I want to talk about today. So since not many of you have taken the test, I just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page with facts and details about the test. So what is the duration of the IELTS speaking exam? Anyone? 3, no, the speaking test only. 15 minutes. Okay, he knows the right answer. 11 to 14 minutes, yeah. 11 to 14, again, depending on different factors. If the examiner thinks he already got what he needs from you, then it's like he stops at 11 minutes. Usually with higher level candidates, the exam will last 14 minutes. How many parts are there in the speaking test? 4. 3, right? So part 1, a conversation about yourself. Well, what do you like? What do you dislike? What are your hobbies? Do you like listening to music? Do you have any pets? Very easy questions. Don't overcomplicate this part. Don't try to show off your English in part 1. No one really cares about your advanced vocabulary or advanced grammar structures in part 1. Part 1 is like warm up. Okay, do you like shopping? Yes, I do love shopping because it just, takes my mind off. I love shopping because I'm an impulse buyer. I love buying new clothes. So you just say things, you just provide reasons, you just answer the questions using very simple everyday English, okay? Part 2, and it's a long turn, individual long turn, right? So you're given a cue card, you see a cue card and like, okay, so talk about your, favorite book. And you have to prepare for 1 minute and then talk about that book, right? You have to say, oh, all right, my favorite book is blah, 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 blah. We're gonna come back to part 2. Part 3, now, this is your chance to shine, right? This is your chance to impress the examiner. Again, I'm not really saying using unnatural English here, but try to use maybe some uncommon vocabulary, some great structures, right? And some great ideas as well, some original ideas for part 3. To have those original ideas, you need to make sure that you read a lot, you read extensively. You listen to different podcasts. You listen to different ideas. Okay, so you have everything at your disposal. So which is the most important part out of these 3? Part 1, part 2, part 3. Which is the most important? Any part, like pretty much is the same. It carries the same score. So basically, what happens is, even in part 1, you can still get some great kind of points, right? By just being very natural, by just answering the questions. But yeah, I agree. Part 2 probably might be the most challenging. I wouldn't say most important, but most challenging part for candidates, right? Part 2, because it may not really be easy to keep going, like for 2 minutes, right? And what are the 4 criteria that you're being tested on in the speaking test? Let's start from the beginning. Right, not writing, speaking. Fluency, okay? Next. Lexical resource, next. Grammar range. Oh, coherence and cohesion was the second, I'm sorry. So, fluency, no. So again, your coherence and cohesion is for writing. Fluency, lexical resource, grammar range and accuracy, and pronunciation. Coherence is actually with the same part as fluency. Fluency and coherence, right? Why do you need coherence in speaking? What does coherence mean? So that you make sense, right? You're logical. You're telling a story that that aligns with what you're like. It has a logical sequencing. Okay, some do's and don'ts for the speaking test. You tell me, like you show me thumbs up if you think this is a good idea to do in your speaking test. You show me thumbs down if you think this is a bad idea. Use a lot of idioms like raining cats and dogs. I want to see more hands. I want to see more thumbs down, right? You don't want to be using a lot of idioms. You don't want to be forcing idioms in every sentence, right? Every single sentence. Give one word, very short answers to simple questions in part 1 because they're simple. Do you like music? No. Thumbs down, hopefully, right? You want to extend your answer a little bit. Give me one reason at least why you don't like music or why you like music, okay? Be natural. Yeah, fine, yeah, thumbs up. Be natural. You have to be yourself. In the speaking, don't pretend to be someone else. Be yourself, okay? Use either American or British accent. So, no! Okay, thumbs down. No accent is a requirement in the IELTS speaking test, right? If you have a British accent or if you have an American accent, that's great, but no one really cares about your accent as long as you have clear pronunciation, you have appropriate pronunciation, right? Everyone, all of us have our own accents, our own individual accents. I have my own individual accent. I don't have an American or British accent. Everyone has their own individual accents. Okay, so especially to a native speaker examiner, it's really obvious. Like you can't really fool them. You can't really fool them with your beautiful accent. I remember, I have a story about this. I remember having, in my class, I used to have students, different students, you know. So there was this one guy with very thick British accent who, he just pretended to have this thick British accent. Right? He wasn't from Britain. He just probably learned from movies, like Peaky Blinders or something. I don't know. Again, I'm not a big fan of that movie. So, what do you call that accent? Someone maybe you might want to remind me. Like, what do you call that? The accent that Londoners use? Cockney accent. Yeah. Okay. So and then we had like the following day we were supposed to have a very similar session with Alex, the examiner. Speaking examiner with the British Council, the old guy, not the young guy that you see nowadays. Although I'm friends with both guys. But so we were supposed to have this masterclass session with Alex, the speaking examiner. So this guy asks me a day before the session, he says, okay, can I use Cockney accent in my speaking? I say, hey, why don't you go ahead and ask this tomorrow, right? Because I don't know. Because I keep saying accents don't matter, but this guy's like, insisting on using Cockney in the speaking test. Like Cockney is like the accent for the uneducated part of London. That's the street accent, like people talk like mafia gangs. So he wanted to sound like mafia who grew up in some parts of. So I thought I was joking. I thought he got the joke, but during the session, the Q&A session, the guy raises his hand. I was like, I'm like, oh shit, okay. And he said, like, can I use the Cockney in my speaking? And Alex goes like, yeah, if you were born and raised in England, London, right? If you were born and raised in that part, use the accent. No one cares. But if you're forcing it, if you just want to sound like a native speaker and you're forcing too much, then that's not a good idea. Okay, next. Again, thumbs up or thumbs down. Continue to speak until the examiner stops you in part 2. Yeah, you have to speak. You have to show your ability to speak in length, right? So it does if you run out of ideas, it's okay to say, okay, I'm done. I've said enough. I think there's not much to say. Like, you can stop in a minute and a half, maybe minute 45 seconds. But it's a good idea, especially for candidates who are not very confident in their speaking, to keep speaking, right? But don't forget the coherent part. Be coherent. Don't just ramble on and on. Don't just say random words, like, right? You have to sound logical. You have to sound coherent. Keep an eye contact. Yeah, that's a good idea to keep an eye contact, unless you have some psychological problems, like you can't really look people in the eye. Then it's okay, I guess. Okay, this one is interesting. Use contractions or like slangs like wanna, gonna. Up, down. Well, it's actually in the middle. Okay, I use them all the time. It's these words have become like a usual part of my natural speech, so I'm not gonna change. You see, I'm not gonna change this my way of speaking just for the exam. Then I would sound unnatural. Then I have to pause, right? I have to I'm sorry, I'm not going to. Like, you have to keep correcting yourself. It's gonna affect your fluency. You see, like, but British examiners, especially like old British guys, they don't like this idea. So if you've been using wanna, gonna in your English for a very long time and you can't really avoid them, that's fine. You can use them in your speaking. No, there's nothing against them. President Obama uses them in his speech, right? Obama, I'm sure you guys are familiar with him. But if you just watching this presentation, say, oh, it sounds cool to use wanna, gonna, right? I'm just gonna use it tomorrow for my exam. No, it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea if you're not familiar with the usage, if you don't use them naturally. Make notes for part 2. Yeah, that's like double thumbs up, right? Make notes, or at least pretend, right? Pretend, just to be polite. I've seen some candidates, like, they're too arrogant. They're like, they want to show off. They say, okay, you have 1 minute to prepare for your speech. The time starts now. Oh, can I just start speaking now? Because I'm ready. It's not gonna get you any bonus points, right? He's an examiner. He has his job as well. He needs to organize his things. He needs to think about your part 1 score. He needs to think about your part 3 questions. He has a job to do. Like, he wants that 1 minute break for himself as well. Give him the break, right? Otherwise, it's like, okay, you know what? All right, I'll show you. Use personal examples in part 3. All right, so this one, I want to make it very clear that it's not a good idea to use personal examples. For example, you can say, oh, for example, I bought this educational toy for my kids, which is the exact thing I said in my exam. And it was a bad mistake, because we were talking about this toys, for my part 2 was talk about your favorite toy from your childhood, and then part 3 is about educational toys for children, right? And I said, yeah, I tend to buy educational toys. For example, I buy educational toys but no one cares about you. Like, no one really gives a damn about what you buy for your kids in part 3. But so the advice is, don't use personal examples for part 3. Stay it's a part 3 is meant to be abstract, general, very right? It's about them. Okay? Okay, here's a good thing. Here's a good thing to keep this in mind. Part 1 is about you. Okay? One person. Part 2 is about you and something else. Or someone else. Right? Your friend, your favorite movie. And part 3 is about them. Okay? What do young people in your country like to do in their free time? What do people in your hometown, let's say, I don't know, right? So it's about them, not you. Another thing, now the next slide I want to show is very important though for those who are shy, maybe not really confident, right? I'm not always this confident. It's just, I think it's a skill that you can learn. It's something that you can learn, okay? So sometimes it comes, it's a second nature to some people. They're really confident and charming, but people like us, you know, we're sometimes socially awkward. But you just need to learn, do a few tricks, especially before your exam. So you can see these pictures, right? So we have low power versus high power. These are exactly the same people, but the bottom pictures, how are they different from the pictures at the top?
They're taking less place.
Bottom, yeah?
They're taking more place.
Oh, yeah, okay, you see that? Okay, so, yeah, they're taking up space, right? They're like, yeah, it's my space. I'm powerful, it's my space, I'm confident. So these guys are really confident. These guys are not really confident. They're like, oh, I'm really shy. I don't know, I'm gonna fail my speaking test. Oh, he doesn't like me or she doesn't like me, right? So they're like, too socially awkward. But they say body language is just like a smile. They say, if you're a little upset, forcing a smile can actually make you feel happier. Okay, because when you're happy, you smile. But if you force a smile, they say that actually it can change your feelings. Like you can actually become happier. So the same way, if you're not a very confident person, by pretending, by using this body language, you can become more confident, at least for the very short period, for this like 15 minutes for your speaking. So all you have to do is go to the bathroom, right? And then like, okay, I'm the best. Just assume, like they say, don't sit like that though in your exam, right? I tried it. It doesn't look good. It's like, yeah, okay, ask me any question, I'm ready. I told one of my students that you could do that, like you can just pull your chair back and you can sit in a very relaxed manner, maybe, in the same pose. And then he was doing it, he pulled his chair back, he was taking a lot of space, he was feeling confident. And the examiner was an old guy, he couldn't hear well, so he comes around, he pushed the chair in, he's like, sit closer to me. This guy's confidence like shatters, right? What do you see in this picture? What is your seated height? Like seated height. And how is it connected to IELTS speaking? It's an analogy. I always make this analogy. For example, speaking test is like a doctor or someone measuring your seated height. It's like the same concept, okay? So you sit down, they measure your height. Okay, so this is your level. This is your height, okay? What do some candidates do? Some candidates climb on top of the chair to pretend that they're taller than they actually are. Okay, so I'm a band 9er, I'm an 8 candidate. I use these idioms. I'm really cool. I use this language, I'm really great with language. So, but it's against the rules because you have to be sitting down. You see what I'm going with this? So some people pretend to be better at English by just using some advanced words that are not actually your level. So it's obvious to the examiner, just like it's obvious to this guy that you're not seated. when he's measuring your height, you're not seated. You're just like cheating him, right? So when you use these unnatural idioms, when you use these like too advanced words, when you use this docile, right? For example, you're just telling the examiner, oh, okay, so I'm just pretending, I'm cheating you, and then he can see it. He can see through you. He can see, okay, he takes his time. He sits you down by asking some questions. He determines your actual level and then may even punish you for trying to fool him. Okay, so that's why I said always be yourself, be natural. You don't have to pretend that you're better than someone else. You don't have to pretend that you're smart. You don't have to have answers to all the questions in the speaking test. Okay, this is not an intelligence test. If you don't know, just say you don't know. It's okay. You guys know Tim, right? The examiner at the IDP. I'm sure he probably visited your center as well. He says, like, there are some questions in part 3 that he doesn't know the answers to. Like, and he's a very smart guy. He's very philosophical. He's a very smart guy. But there are some candidates, they don't admit they don't know. They just keep going. They're like, yeah, I know the answer to that, yeah. And he's like, oh my goodness. Like, he's saying, and then one candidate, probably a decent candidate like you guys, who had this presentation probably, right? So he goes into the, takes the test and says, oh, I'm not sure, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sorry, I don't know. He's using great English, he's just admitting he doesn't know. And like Tim was like, oh, thank God, finally, a decent guy. I'm gonna give him band 8 or something, right? He's honest. You need to be honest. Final tips for the speaking test, and then we're gonna move on to a Q&A session. Be polite in your speak. I said confident, but don't be arrogant, right? Be polite. Greet politely, but don't give any unnecessary comments or questions. Don't say, oh, you look tired, how are you? Oh, how many candidates have you interviewed? You want to go out for plov after this? He's not your friend, he's doing his job. Okay? How was your day? Do you like Uzbekistan? You know, don't say that. Relax and try to forget that you're taking the exam. You're like, pretend that you're just having a conversation. Don't think it's an exam environment, okay? Talk as if you're speaking to a long-lost family friend, maybe like a friend of your mother, a friend of your father who's just interested in finding out more about you, okay? So do you like watching movies? It's just an old sweet lady just asking whether you like movies. You just ask, yeah, I do love movies. Thank you for asking, yeah. My favorite movie is this. So you're just speaking to, having a very friendly conversation. Answer the questions honestly. I talked about that. You have to answer the questions honestly. Remember that your examiner is there to help you, okay? He's not your enemy, he's your friend. Because we tend to have these negative associations with examiners. We don't like them, right? For some reason, they're like, oh, he's gonna give me a bad score. But they're actually trying so hard to give you your best potential score, like maximum range. They're there to they feel bad. They say they feel bad. If a candidate makes a mistake and they cannot give you a proper score because you made this mistake, they feel bad, they say. Because I talked to many examiners before. So they're like, oh, I wish I could give him this. I wish I could give everyone band 9. I wish, right? But they want to do that, but they can't. And final, don't ask for your score at the end of the test, right? Oh, okay, so what was my score? Can you tell me what my score is? So how did I do? Can I see the score? Because they grade you like right after you leave. They give you a score, right? Within 2 minutes, your score is ready. So they have a score. Probably with lower level candidates, they actually have a score right from the part 1, right? Oh, he's a band 4.5. But don't ask because they're not allowed to tell you the score, right? It's against the rules, and it's just you're just putting him in a very uncomfortable situation.
Hi, Mr. Bekzod. I like doing writing or speaking, and they are more relaxable than other factors. Which is your most relaxable factor in English?
I'm not sure if I understand the word factor. Yeah, so I guess that the person is like aspect, like speaking and writing aspects are relaxed. I'm really happy to hear that someone actually takes pleasure from doing speaking and writing, especially writing, right? I love doing, I think, I don't know, in the like over the recent like past few like months, I've been preparing for my exams. I started to like the writing process more and more. So I think now but I generally like reading a lot. Like I do love reading. I think the key to success in English is in reading. If you read more in English, you just become better at this language.
Okay. Another one. What was your motivation behind retaking IELTS until you got a 9?
First of all, I had, like I said, I wasn't really chasing after 9 when I was taking the test. It was basically to help my students understand the test better. But in the past 2 years, I think I decided to get a 9 because, first of all, no one actually had scored a 9 before in Uzbekistan. So, and then I was really trying to be the first one. And secondly, I wanted to become a speaking examiner, and one of the requirements to be a speaking examiner is to have Band 9 for speaking and Band 8 for writing, which are the combinations for Band 9 overall. So that was my goal.
Is it possible to improve IELTS score from 5 to 7 in 1 month? And if not, what's the minimum time required to do so?
Yeah, depends on many factors. Your age, how much time you're spending on improving your English. But generally, I would say it's not really possible to jump from 5 to 7 in 1 month, unless you really screwed your test, like you screwed up something really bad in your exam. You're really like, you're at the Band 6.5 level, but something really bad happened in the exam. You felt, right? Maybe you felt sick or something, and then you got 5. So 1 month time, you can probably improve and you can get your 7, right? But if your actual level is 5, then 5 means pre-intermediate level. And like 7 is advanced. And I'm sure you guys at this school, what I like about the school is like they have these general English courses, which are, I think, appropriate in length. So going from pre-intermediate to advanced takes time. And I'm sure you guys know that.
Can you make a daily plan for preparation for IELTS by all sections?
Yeah, I can. But again, the thing that works for me may not work for you guys, right? You should learn to rely on yourself because you have to make plans that work for you. Like psychologically, because everyone has different levels of energy. Everyone has different, like amount of free time that you can spare for maybe learning English. So a lot of students actually ask for this, but usually I can give you some guidelines, but I'm not gonna make a plan customized only for you, right? It's just not possible.
Okay. Is there an element of luck in getting a 9 band score, or just it's pure knowledge and determination?
No, I already mentioned that there is an element of luck. I said everything has to go your way. Maybe it's the other way around. There's an element of maybe being unlucky if you cannot get a 9, right? Like if you're trying for 9, you know that you deserve the score, you know that you're capable of getting a 9, but you're always kind of coming up short, like by half a point. It just probably means you're just unlucky, right? So there is an element of luck in that, I guess.
Okay, here is a question. Girl asks that how to get band score 8 or higher from IELTS writing. What should we do?
Okay, Nowadays, there is this, you could request for a breakdown of your scores, right? Officially, you can get a breakdown of your scores, a separate scores for task 1, separate scores for task 2. So I would probably suggest like taking the test and then get your breakdown and then see where you're making mistakes, right? What your weaknesses, and then just work on those weaknesses. The way I see it, like a lot of candidates are stuck at 7.5. They're doing great in part 2, like task 2 writing, but they're not really bright in task 1. They're like getting 5s and sometimes even 4s in task 1 and getting like 8s and 9s in task 2. So and then when you average it out, like it's 7.5. Okay, so.
You know, you had a quite interesting path of getting this like brilliant band score.
Yeah.
And like as a human being, every time you face any difficulty and you fail, you lose this sense of motivation.
Yeah.
How did you like keep it up?
I think it was the expectation of people. Like everyone was expecting at one point. They were expecting me to get this score. I think this is the support that I got, like psychological support that I had from people, you know, my subscribers, my students, everyone who knew me. Like they knew that I was going for the score, and they were like my family as well. They were really there for me. I think that was the motive. And plus, as I said, like the fact that no one had scored before. The band 9, like this just kept me going, because when someone already gets that 9 and they're like, and there's more pressure, right? And then I would probably like, yeah, then it's easier to give up when that happens. But the reason I kept going was that people really were like there for me, and I didn't want to let them down. I don't want to disappoint them, I guess.
Can you give us your top 3 pieces of advice out of English, out of IELTS, just on life?
Oh, life.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm qualified to give you life advice. I think like I'm just an IELTS not examiner, but instructor. But I think what I noticed, like I'm 35, and what I've noticed is that you have to love your job, like love what you do. Choose a profession that you're really passionate about, right? Don't really worry about money. Money comes when you're really good at something. Money follows. But if you keep, chasing after money, you'll never get to it. Like the same thing. Like if I'm sure you guys are really young. You're chasing after romance, boyfriend, girlfriends. The harder you chase, right? You notice that the more that they drift apart from you. Like there's more distance between you. So the same thing. Like if you just stop chasing, and if you just start focusing on your own life and self-improvement, these things, they come to you themselves, right? Like they want to be next to you when you're successful, when you're really good at something. Yeah, and so that would probably be my life advice. Yeah.
After achieving this milestone of band score 9, I'm sure that you felt like any sort of emptiness inside of you.
Yeah.
Do you have any goal or achievement?
Yeah, I'm doing my CELTA now. Like I said, my goal now is to maybe at some point, not necessarily immediately, but work as an IELTS speaking examiner at some point. But overall, I want to make some contribution to overall, like teaching standards in Uzbekistan, teaching English in Uzbekistan, and I'm sure you guys, the school is doing they're making their own contribution as well, and I'm behind the same goal. We're all united, right, towards the same goal of improving English standards and raising English standards in this country.
Okay, let's imagine a person with like a median band score 5.5, and he or she has 3-5 months left what would you recommend to do in order to get at least 7
Yeah.
and be ready for the university?
Yeah. You know, I really want to stress the importance of improving our general English. And I couldn't really emphasize it better. I think it was Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, I'm sure, like you guys are familiar with Lincoln, right? He said this, he has this quote like saying, if they ask me to chop down a tree in 8 hours, I spend the first 6 hours sharpening my axe. So if you have, I don't know, 5 months to ace the IELTS exam, I would spend most of it improving my general English. And improving my general English doesn't mean going to, or like taking general English courses. I don't mean to say you have to be stuck at an intermediate level. All I'm saying is doing this self-improvement, right? Keep improving. I keep improving. The reason I got 9, like, I don't think I deserved a 9 last year. I don't think I deserved 9 2 years ago. I just kept improving my general English, right? So you just keep working on your weaknesses, weak areas. So improving general English means just like spending time reading in English, listening to English, making conversations in English, right? Writing something in English. This is all. Like IELTS is just a test. But the main purpose of the IELTS exam is to measure your actual level of English. So the only way to get from 5.5 to 7 is by improving your English. I don't really see any other way.
Okay, at this point, I think we should better go to more into details of proper English learning.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Can you give us some suggestions how a proper, ideal English learning should look?
I'm not the authority in this field. I don't even have a degree in teaching English, to be honest. I have a degree in business. But I've spent most of my life now teaching English and preparing students for the IELTS exam. And what I've learned so far is that when the ideal classroom, ideal English lessons should be something, first of all, it should have a smaller class size, right? All students should be actively engaging the class. Teachers should use student-centered methods in teaching. They shouldn't be doing all the work for you. They shouldn't be, for example, solving your problems, right? They should only guide you towards your goals, because it's your goal, it's your plan, it's your way, it's your life, and learning English is the same as any other aspect in life. You have to make the effort. You have to do the job. You have to do the work, hard work. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to get your own hands dirty, not the teacher's hands, right? I say that because I know that there are some teachers in Uzbekistan who tend to spoon feed their students. They tend to give everything, prepare everything, give their students ready speaking answers or their essays to copy from. Okay, so this is my essay, this is band 8, so copy, learn it, memorize it, use it in your exam. That's not how you teach, right? You teach them by showing the way, but by actually asking them to do the job, to do the work. So I think that's what you guys do here as well, I'm sure.
May I give one personal question?
Yeah.
Can you give us your book list?
Book list? What do you mean,
books that you
books
suggest
that
to read?
For English or
No, not in English, just in general.
General?
Yeah.
Okay. I love reading books. First of all, I have to say I love reading books.
Do notes, guys. Do notes.
Yeah, but one thing I've learned again in life is books are just like people in our lives. They come when the right time comes. For example, Bill Gates, he has a list of a lot of books, right, that he's reading. He'll usually right? Like he published this list, like saying, "Oh, this is the books that I'm reading," and like everyone is like, "Oh, I have to read this book because Bill Gates is reading. He's a smart guy." You don't have to read the books that someone else is reading, right? Like you have to read the books that speak to you. When I was their age, I think I really enjoyed Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. I think this is a great book to read, but I'm not really encouraging you to read this book. If this book is for you, if this book speaks to you, you'll find it. It will come at some point, right? Maybe there are other better books that I haven't read that you guys might read, right? But if you just ask me, like, I don't want to sound like, philosophical, but so if you just like ask me, what I really love is this, another book I really like is Alchemist. I'm sure you guys also, some of you must have read this. Alchemist is a great book. Another one, I keep forgetting the name of this book. It's my favorite book, but if for some reason it's a strange name, so I'll probably, if I remember it, I'll let you know. But they actually recently translated this book into Uzbek as well, but they're like, it was a strange Uzbek translation, the title. That was a book. And another one that I read when I was, like for example, younger was, again, that's a self-improvement book. Stephen Covey's like 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. But when you reach a certain age, you don't really like reading self-improvement books anymore. But I think at your age, I think it's quite appropriate to read books like that. But Alchemist, I think it's a great book to read for any people.
Okay. When did you take your first IELTS and what was the pen score?
I think some of you who might be following me, I think might have the answer to that question, right? When did I first take the test and what was my score? 2006, yeah. What was my score? 6.5, exactly, yeah. Yeah, well, back then 6.5 was a decent score, I'll tell you. It's still a decent score, but I'll tell you this much. I took the test because I was applying for Westminster University. And 6.5 was enough for me to get the scholarship, 100% scholarship, to study at Westminster University. Back then, in 2006, right? Now, what, like even 7.5, right? Holders. They're really worried they may not get the scholarship, right? But back then, we had course mates who scored 5.5, who was also on scholarship. So, yeah, 6.5 was a great score back then. It's like, but yeah, that's...
Okay. Are you planning to retake your IELTS in British Council?
No. Well, I think I've moved on with this aspect of life. Taking, you know what I like for a month ago, I think I visited the IDP Center for something else. I was training to be a teacher trainer. I was getting some official training from IDP, so I went down there to get my training. And I saw some IELTS instructors taking their exam there. They were all nervous, looking at me like, oh, this guy came, so trying to ask me some advice. But they were the same instructors who were competing for Band 9 with me. Seeing these guys still taking their exam and me like completing my job felt like I've done this thing, now I can move on. I don't want to be the candidate anymore. I just don't want to be a test candidate anymore. First of all, I'm too old for that. Second of all, there's nothing to prove. There's nothing else to prove, right? So it's when you get your Band 9, you just need to move on and do something better, right? You just keep taking the test over and over. Just doesn't really make sense to me. But don't take my words like literally, but if you see me taking the test with the British Council, it might happen maybe, because at the end of the day, I really love this IELTS test. But right now, in this particular moment in my life, I'm really happy where I am, and I don't want to be an IELTS candidate anymore, right? I want to be an examiner. So that's what it is.
Okay, there is a common problem with coming up with ideas, developing them in both speaking and writing sections. What would you recommend to candidates in order to resolve these problems?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. That's a great. Is that coming from you or is that coming from the?
I'm reading questions,
but you're formulating them
yeah,
yourself.
I'm
Okay, yeah,
formulating them.
yeah. That's a great question. A lot of candidates tend to be stuck, right? Looking for ideas. I think when I said read a lot, that's what I meant. You have to be reading a lot every day. That was my IELTS motto back in, when I started teaching. Read an article a day, right? To keep your IELTS worries away. That's something that I used to say to my students. And I think it's a very relevant advice. When you read extensively, you have ideas, right? You always have more ideas that you can use. For example, in one of my recent exams, I took the task 2 question was something like this. Nowadays, modern research is not really producing any practical results. It's not really giving anything practical benefits in modern life. So funds, like aimed for this modern research should be reduced. The funds given should be reduced because they're not really yielding any results. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So that was the question. Now, if you think about the question, it's a very tough question for an IELTS candidate, especially if you don't have any ideas about what modern research is and whether it's producing any results, practical results or anything. So you need to have read something about this before, right? To produce a good essay. So one thing what I do is in my classes, and I'm sure there are some IELTS teachers as well here, so that could work for them as well. Or maybe that could just work for IELTS candidates. The ideal IELTS teaching should be like discussing these big ideas, these problems, the things that appear in your test, the questions that appear in your test, right? So you need to, as an IELTS instructor, as an IELTS candidate, you should be discussing those things in your classes. You should be discussing what greenhouse gases are. You should be discussing what solutions do you have for worldwide famine, hunger. You should be discussing questions or your solutions for global warming, right? So you need to have these ideas. You need to be thinking about crime and punishment. You need to be thinking about whether young people should be punished the same way as adults, because these questions appear in your test. So in your IELTS classes, you should be talking more about these things rather than learning some formulas for writing, rather than learning how to write an introduction. But IELTS candidates, they don't think it's a serious class.
Yeah.
You start at one point I was teaching, we were having these discussions with candidates, with students. I'm talking about global warming, greenhouse gas emissions, etc. And a student raised a hand and saying, "Okay, can we start the lesson?" I'm like, "All right, forget it."
It's like learning all the formulas but having nothing to put in.
Yeah, exactly. So what does that do, right?
Yeah.
Like knowing how to write an introduction or conclusion, which I think don't really matter in the exam. Okay.
There is another question which coming out from your answer. And let's imagine this band score 7.5 or 8 as a pie chart. What is the contribution of knowing IELTS formulas, knowing IELTS structures in getting this band score? What is the contribution?
I tell you, it might actually have a negative contribution. It might actually have a negative influence. If you're too hung up, if you're too fixated on learning structures and formulas and patterns for writing some language, memorized language, it may actually do more harm than good to your score. usually high band scoring candidates, like if you're scoring 8, 8.5 for writing, for example, I'm scoring 8, 8.5. What I notice is like I score better when my writing doesn't really have anything structural, that doesn't really follow any traditional methods. Okay, so I'm writing like 5 paragraph essays. I'm writing 3 paragraphs. I'm in the body instead of like 2, as in the traditional method. So these are the things that I feel like contributes more to your score at a higher level. So learning these structures might be helpful for lower level candidates. Like if you're aiming for 5.5 in writing or 6 in writing, I think these structures might be really helpful.
Yeah.
Right? They come in handy. Like it's like learning how to walk. You first learn how to walk with the thing, right? Like that's something to help you. The kids, they use that. What is that? Like I'm not really sure. But let's say it's a cane. Like you had a bad injury. So when you start to recover, you start using a cane, right? Like something to lean on when you're walking. So these structures, I think they're like a cane. You need them at first, but when you get better, you need to throw it away. Does it make sense? So you learn these structures, they help you to reach a certain level, but when you reach a certain level, you have to throw them away. Like, it's the same as like starting your IELTS essay nowadays. It's true that, there's no doubt that. What else? What are some other introductions like or lines that you know for IELTS writing? These days, yeah. Yeah, like the same. So like years ago when I was stuck at 7, that's what I discovered. Like these lines help you get to 7 maybe in writing, but to get to 7.5 or 8, you shouldn't be using these words anymore. If that makes sense. Because they're really unnecessary words that don't really add any meaning to your writing. Okay, there's no doubt that. What does that mean? There's no doubt that crime levels are increasing. You can just say crime levels are increasing, it's the same meaning. But you're just using fewer words, okay? Like for example, there's this, due to the fact that, like for example, this is a very common phrase that I see like candidates use in their speaking and writing. Due to the fact that. Due to the fact that I'm blah, 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 I like to get an IELTS 7. Due to the fact that I'm applying for a university, I like to get 7, right? They want to say due to the fact that because they think it's cool. They think it's advanced. They think it's better than because. I have news for you. Like because is like 100 times better. Because is always better than due to the fact that.
It sounds more natural, guys.
Yeah, because then you're wasting your time. Like you're wasting your words due to the fact that 5 words. You're using the 5 words to convey the same message. It's like you have to treat your words like it's your money, right? If you can pay 1,000 sums, right, for something, would you like pay? You would be foolish to pay 5,000, right? So you're just using five words to mean the same thing. So that's what like higher level candidates do. This is what efficient writers do, right? Use less words, fewer words, yes, to get to the same meaning.